Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Cooking with Unity. I'm your host, Max Moreau, and today we're going to be doing some VR stuff. I'm calling this project VRProject1 because I didn't have a good name for it. But what we're going to be doing is setting up the basics of a VR project and setting up buttons. Now, I've already actually done some of this setup, and if you go into GitHub, you can with the link at the bottom there, you can go ahead and download the files and follow along. You also are going to be able to maybe watch what I did there later. I did record it. I didn't really intend to show it, but I realized after the fact that it still might be useful to see. The main reason I didn't do it as a show is because there's a lot of loading involved. I guess I could remove the loading, couldn't I? I always forget about that. I can edit after now that I'm not doing things live. I really am not good at editing, to be perfectly honest. So here we go. I'm going to go into VRProject1, and we're just going to launch it. I probably should have been doing that while doing the introduction so that you don't have to wait on both of us. So yesterday I did this episode. I want to let everyone know, and I'm going to try and recreate the mistakes or at least mention them if I don't make them this time around. Part of the reason I like doing the show the way I do it is because it shows actual process and it shows that things don't always work, and sometimes and almost all the times it's your fault, but like you have to figure out what part was your fault. And so, and sometimes it's not your fault. Like we're going to run into one of those, at least one of those on this episode. At least we did last time, and I don't actually have a good solution for it. So we're going to run into it again on this one. So first, I do want to show what we did on the previous episode. See, on the not previous episode, but on the setup. This is probably more helpful, honestly, than just watching me do it. But basically, we went into the player settings, we set up pushy pixels, VRProject1, just the basics. We also went in here, I turned on dynamic I didn't turn on dynamic batching. Well, let's turn on dynamic batching. That's funny. I thought I had done that. And we are going to go down here, and the other important thing here is the active input handling is set to both. And we're using the new input package system. We didn't actually install it by itself. We installed the XR Toolkit package, and I'll show you where that is in a second here. And that included the input handling automatically. We also, of course, enabled the deprecated virtual reality supported settings. The reason we're using these deprecated settings is because the new settings don't work on Steam VR or OpenVR, as it were. I've just had a lot more luck on the older deprecated toolchain. I do check the new one periodically, but it's still busted. I still can't get proper input. So this is what we're using for now. I always move things forward when we can. As far as how I installed the XR Toolkit stuff, that's in the package manager here. And in here, there's an advanced button that you have to enable by default. It's already enabled right now, but I'm going to click it so that you see it. It's still loading. It's waiting for me, or it's waiting on something. I'm trying to click again. There we go. So you need to make sure that Show Preview Packages is here, and then the package that you're going to be installing is, well, I mean, it's already installed. You don't have to do it on this project, but if you're doing a new project, you're installing the XR Interaction Toolkit. And as I said, it's in the preview things. This gives us a lot of really nice tools, though, and you'll see them as we go through. So let's get started on the actual work. We're going to first need to set up a very basic scene for our character. So let's just do that real quick. We're just going to create a plane to be our floor. And that should default to 0, 0. Okay, it didn't. Defaulted to Y1. Let's go to 0, just 0 it all out. Actually, you can just go to reset here, and that'll do it. And then we're going to create a cube, 3D object cube. And this cube, we're going to... Why is it remembering this position? I don't know. I actually do want it at 1. Oh, wait, I don't want it at 1 because it's floating. I want it at 0.5 on this one. 0.5. So that makes our cube not be floating because the cube would be at the center and this is at the center. You need 0.5 to offset by the height of 1 meter that the cube is by default. And this is our scene, and that's enough. If we hit play right now, we'll get just a rendering of the scene. Now, actually not just a rendering of the scene. We'll get a little bit more than that. So I can actually look around right now, and this is because VR support is enabled. This is all I can do. I can move around a little bit too, but the default camera position is such that it's kind of hard to tell. But I can and am capable of doing that. So I need to go back to my screen here real quick. Seems shakier for some reason than I thought it was going to be. All right, so what we need is a character and or a controller or a rig or something. So we have this built in now using the XR toolkit on Unity. So if you go into Game Object, XR, and you've got a bunch of options here, these are action based, and there's probably some reasons to do these. Like if I was more used to the new Unity action systems and stuff, I'd probably have more to do with these, but I find that the device-based ones are way easier to set up and kind of more useful. And so I'm going to be showing you how to do these on the show. Please feel free to explore at your leisure everything in here. There's lots to learn, and there's lots that you can do. So we're going to go in here and we're going to choose Room Scale XRRig, and I'm just going to go ahead and move the XRRig to the top here so that we can find it. And in doing that, it appears that it automatically moved the camera for us. That's kind of interesting. I didn't know that it would do that, but that's cool that I didn't have to deal with the main camera last time, and I was like, I guess I just had two cameras rendering. No, I guess they just moved it for us. So I'm going to just move this back so that we're like standing in front of the cube, but not close enough to like touch it. And just going to hit play to see what we get. So here we are, and I now have these two laser things coming out of my hands, and I can't move with the sticks, and I can't do anything with the buttons, but you can see that I now have, like, at least tracking of my hands, so that's something new, and you can see that it did actually pay attention to where I set my position. So I do feel like I'm a little bit in the floor, though, so I'm going to have to try and fix that. Let's go ahead and stop play on this. Sorry, I've got controllers also. My VR controllers can also move my mouse, and so when they're pointed at the screen, the virtual screen, they can affect my ability to use my regular mouse, which is much more useful in Unity. For the pointing with pool cues is not great for input on these type of projects, especially when you have to pick such small things. So what do we got here? So first off, I'm going to do it in a different order than I did on I'm going to call it my practice run. I had every intention of publishing it. I'm going to actually do a different thing first. So I want to actually get the ability to move around first. So, okay, so here's why I was in the ground. So this should be at 0. Let's make the X at 0.2 just for fun. And let's make this just an even 2.75. Because I'm OCD like that. No, I shouldn't say that. You know what I mean? Like, just the squick thing. So I'm trying to get out of that habit, honestly, and VR is helping break me of this because I have much more of an analog connection with the things I build now. You'll see more of that as we have more tools available to us. So we're going to add a locomotion system to this. In the Game Object XR menu here, we can go device-based locomotion system. And in my own projects, I've noted that it doesn't seem to matter where this thing is in the level, so I usually put it inside the XRRig. It's fine in the projects that I've been doing. I'm not saying this won't cause problems or can't cause problems, but it hasn't caused any problems for me, and it has caused some solutions with regards to prefabs and organizing data and stuff like that. So I usually keep all my locomotion systems underneath their respective rigs. So to get this thing to work, we're going to have to plug in the XRRig here. So we're going to have to just drag the XRRig into here. And we're also going to have to plug in a controller for the snap turn provider. So the way we do that is got this controllers list. It might not be disclosed at first. It doesn't matter if it is or not. You can just drag the controller that you want to control this with here. So I use the right controller here. This is how you do it on device-based. It's a little bit different when you do it on action-based. It's more using the Unity control system stuff that you use to determine which controllers to use rather than dragging in the hand controller itself. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play and see if these concepts actually now work, or if it's still... All right, so I've got snap turn now. That's good. I've got... Do I have a locomotion? Why don't I have a teleport? See, last time, the reason I thought I didn't have a teleport is because I had removed these laser things from the hands before I even added to the locomotion system. Now, that theory is clearly not the case. Like, I don't know what button I need to push to actually make this teleportation work, or what I'm missing in the setup here. Let's see. System, locomotion system. Do we have to do something special on the controllers here? Model prefab. All right, we should probably use that model prefab too. I had previously just attached the sphere, and that works just fine, but the model prefab can give us a couple of advantages in here. I don't know. We'll see what I do. So we have this XR line interactor, line renderer, XR array interactor, interaction layer mask, everything. This has a collider, right? I would imagine it does. But let's see. Mesh renderer, mesh collider. I wonder if it needs to be convex. XR controller device based. And Locomotion System didn't have anything going on here, right? Yeah. Just teleportation provider. All right. Well, we're going to cover teleportation on a future episode. I'm going to instead show how we can get set up smooth rotate and smooth movement. And then we will go back at a later time to get this going the way that we want it to. So I'm going to just call this locomotion system default teleport snap turn locomotion, so that we know for sure. And if I ever have to search the scene, guess what? I'm going to find that thing, no matter what word I decide to use to find it. So we're gonna... Why is that still up here? We're going to go ahead and make one new... I'm just going to go ahead and just duplicate this one. That'll be fine. Just dupe. And we're going to disable this one and just leave it there. And I'm going to call this one Max Locomotion, because it's going to be for me. You can call it whatever you want. This is not going to be configurable. It's going to be just straight up whatever settings I like the most. So we're going to remove the snap turn provider. We're going to remove the teleportation provider. While I'm at it, I'm going to go into the left and right hand controllers and get rid of those stupid line renderers and XR interactors. So remove component. You have to do that one before the line renderer, otherwise it'll complain. And get rid of the X-ray interactor as well. And same thing here, drop the line visual, the line renderer, and the XR array interactor. So now we're going to go into here and we're going to add a component. We're going to do continuous move provider device based, and continuous move provider, continuous turn provider device based. And so both of these require a locomotion system. You can just, you can either drag this into here, but it's a shorter distance to just grab the header here and drag it into here. You can do that. And you can do that on the second one here too as well. Boop. So now those things are hooked up. This is already hooked up, and now we still have to do the controllers. So the right-hand controller is going to handle our continuous turn, and the left-hand controller is going to handle our movement. What else? So forward source, I'm going to currently use main camera. You could also make this the left hand. And most games have options for all of this. We're going to explore putting options into our game at a much later time. Oh, thank you, Git, for one. I don't know why you would decide just today to do something like that and interrupt my show. Anyway, so what are we doing? Move speed 1 is too slow. We're going to make that 3. And turn speed 60 is way too slow. I'm going to make that 220. And so now if I go into the scene and hit play, if all has gone well, I can now move around with the left stick. It's based on, so if I press forward and I just rotate, I'm now moving based relative to camera. Now again, some people really prefer relative to controller. I actually do both, but I preferred controller, and I'm transitioning to head just because I found most of the games have such complex hand interactions now. They're hard to choose your movement direction while you're flailing your left hand, right? So yeah, I mostly do camera forward now when I have the option. So going back. Now, I don't know where my hands are anymore because my hands don't have anything rendering them. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do it the same way I did last time. We'll play with the model system next time when it'll make more sense when we're playing with hands and stuff. Right now, I'm just going to add a sphere underneath as a child of these objects. I'm just going to create a sphere, put it under the right-hand controller. We're going to say, okay, it's already at 0, 0, 0, perfect. And but we need to make it much smaller. So I'm going to make it just 5 centimeters across, 0.05, 0.05, and 0.05. And I'm just going to keep everything else on here. We're going to duplicate it, control, or I'm using a virtual keyboard when I have a real keyboard. Control D, I think. Sorry, my mouse. The difficulties of developing VR. Control D, there we go. Put that under the left-hand controller as well. Rename it to just sphere. I guess I could call it hand or something, but it really isn't one. It's a sphere. And yeah, so if we hit play now, here we go. I've got hands, or spheres at least, and these just track where my hands are, and they're actually tracking rotation too. It would be very difficult to tell, but the edge of the polygons, you can slightly see them perturbing when in VR. I doubt you can probably tell on the screen. So going to now, what are we doing? So we've got our character. That's a great start. I love that we're at this point, but I want to actually get a small bit of interaction in. So we're going to build a little push button, like Boneworks, like the examples I've shown in Boneworks. I'm going to have to rotate these left when I put them down so that they don't overlap that show hide things in the corner. So we're going to make a little push button. So let's go ahead and start by making a cylinder. 3D object cylinder. So here's our cylinder. It's big. And one of the things you can start doing is I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to put the cylinder in it. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to reset both objects just for safety's sake. Okay, so this is at 0, 0, 0. Perfect. And we're going to call this object a, what is this going to be called? This is going to be called a button. And I'm going to call this cylinder the button housing. All right. Button house. Yeah. So now that we've got this here, I'm just going to go ahead and drag it into our assets here, and that'll create a prefab. And this prefab now, this is something I don't think I've ever shown on this show because I don't think we had nested prefabs the last time I played with it, or maybe I did on the VR episode a little bit, but we have nested prefabs. So you can actually either double click this or click on this, and you can go into the prefab editor, and that's nice. Now we're kind of separate of our scene, and we can make modifications to it. Not everyone likes to work separate of the scene, but you can. So I just wanted to point this out just in case other people have workflows that work better isolating things. When you have complex characters and scripts and stuff, it sometimes can be very helpful to separate things from the scene. So what else are we going to do? We're going to make the thing a lot smaller. So what's a good size for a button? Let's make it 10 centimeters across. Make it like 10 by 10 and see what that puts us at. All right, so 10 centimeters across. Yeah, let's try that. And we obviously want it to be shorter. So let's make this like 0.5, like 0.5 or something. Yeah, that might be good. Kind of a square. Yeah, that'll be perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, maybe it won't be perfect actually. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's make it like 0.3. Then we're going to create a button, the button itself. So I'm going to add a, can I not just add a, oh, create, there we go, 3D object, sphere. I'm going to put it in the button, not underneath the button housing. And that way we can scale it separately. So we can just make this 0.05, sorry, 0.03, 0.03, or sorry, 0.05, 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. Okay, that's too small, actually. Let's make it 0.1 on all sides. Is that going to do it? Oh, yeah. 0.9. What did we make this thing again? 0.1. Okay, so yeah, let's make it 0.8 on the 0.08. Actually, let's go with 9. I like that better. Tweaks. All right. And we're going to need to differentiate it a little bit. So I'm going to create a new material. And we're going to call this material red. And we're just going to make it red. We're just going to take the color picker on the albedo, which just means base color. And we're going to now place red on the sphere. And so now we got this little like push button on the top here. Actually, I am going to just see what happens if I make it the exact same size. Let's try 1 here. Okay, so the problem with 1 is you get the polygons don't exactly match, so you get some Z fighting in the middle there. So yeah, let's keep it at 0.9 or maybe even 0.95. See, 0.95, not 95. 0.95, 95, and 0.95. All right, that looks good. So what else do we need to make this thing work? So the button housing has a capsule collider. I'm going to get rid of it for right now. I just don't want to deal with what could cause us as problems. I'm just going to disable it. I'm not going to remove it completely just in case we want it later. There is no such thing as a cylinder collider because it would be too expensive, I guess. So they don't have that as an option. So that would be a much better option than I'd feel safer about it because it wouldn't be interrupting our ability to push down on the button. So, not that it's going to interrupt us too much, considering we have the ability to pass through things right now with our hands. So, this sphere is going to depress when you press it down. And the way we can do that is by a configurable joint. Now, in my Boneworks video, I said spring joints a lot, and almost every case when I said spring joint, I actually meant configurable joint. This thing is a beast. It has a lot of options. And you're going to run into these a lot because they're kind of the most useful joint, and they allow you to do a lot of things like, moving things in a particular direction or on single axis and stuff. That being said, I've run into problems where even though you say lock on this, it doesn't lock things. We're going to see that tonight. So it's not a panacea for everything, and yeah, so it's not going to solve all your problems. But it can solve a lot of them, and the ones it can't solve, you can usually solve using the rigid body settings here. By the way, when we added a configurable joint, it automatically added a rigid body for us, so we want to make sure to turn off gravity on it. It'd probably be fine with gravity on, but I don't want to have the configurable joint springing have to fight gravity. I want it to like sit where I want it to be, and then I just want it to move back to that position. So X motion, locked. Y motion, limited. X motion, Z motion, locked. Locked, locked, locked. So if I did free here, that means this stuff doesn't do anything. If I do locked, it really seems to mean that this stuff doesn't do anything. It's supposed to mean that it doesn't move at all, but that hasn't been my experience so far. I'm also going to just make sure that the anchor point is at 0. And it doesn't really matter. This thing will just choose an anchor point, and since it's going to return to that point anyway, it shouldn't make a difference unless it's offset. I guess it might make a difference. I'm just going to keep it there. Like if it was the Z or X directions, it would actually make a difference. In this case, Y doesn't actually matter because we're moving the Y. So the linear limit, I'm just going to leave it at 0, actually. And then I'm going to set the linear limit spring to something non-zero. I'm going to make it like 10. So the way this works is if this is 0, it is infinitely strong. Like it does not move from its position. It becomes a locking type thing as opposed to a springy type thing. But as soon as it goes to like 0.00001 or whatever, the small math.f.epsilon or whatever, it immediately becomes, this is the spring force, and more is stronger spring, and less is less spring. So keep that in mind. It behaves differently at 0 than it does for the rest of the range. And I'm going to go ahead and just make a BS damper value of 2. We can tweak these things later if they're out of line. It should be fine. So any other details that I need to do here? I'm going to just leave it like this so we can see what happens. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to go back here, and in our scene, I'm going to save our scene 2. In our scene, we've got these sphere colliders on our hands. I'm just going to leave them here, and we're just going to see what happens, because the result was actually interesting. I thought so, at least. Oh, wait, I didn't put the button someplace so we can actually, like, reach it very easily. Oh, yeah, that's right. The controls were pointed at the screen again. It's like my mouse just disappears, basically. So what was I doing? Oh, yeah, moving the button. So the button needs to be up. We need to make it so that it's not just in the ground, and we're just going to put it at exactly 0.1. And that should put it right at the top of the cube. The other thing I'm going to do for right now is I'm just going to temporarily just disable the cube so that we can see what's going on, and also so that it won't interact with the button and cause problems. So here we go. We have our button is sitting here, it's floating here. If I move my hand through it, nothing happens, except for something did happen that time. Like if I move fast enough, or just as a sometimes, like it moves. It's kind of frustrating, really. Actually, oh wow, that's interesting. If we both use both hands, it seems to work better than with one hand. But it can work with one hand. It's strange, anyway. But this is because the game, this is because Unity is trying to figure out how to collide things, and it's using just your box collider, your sphere collider to do it, and not a rigid body. If we add a rigid body to this, and we turn it to, even if we turn it to kinematic, it should solve our issue. So I'm going to go ahead and add a rigid body here. Turn off gravity. You technically don't have to turn off gravity when you turn it kinematic because it will no longer calculate gravity in that case anyway, but I like to just do it for safety's sake and because I really don't want gravity, even if I did turn it from kinematic at some point later. So here we go. Now it's going to work every time. But you can see that the constraining that I did doesn't actually constrain the movement in the X and Z axes. We really just want it to move down. We don't really mind if it moves up, but we definitely don't want it to move across to the side and outside of the housing. Though it might give an interesting look to things. Maybe, I don't know. You could probably do something with it. But yeah, so that fixes that problem. And so now let's put our cube back in and see one more problem so we can kill a couple problems at once. So if we hit play here, now you have a button, but we can't move it down because it's colliding with the ground underneath. This is the reason it's all pressed up like this and looks more like a crystal ball rather than a button now. And we can move it across as long as we're not moving it through other objects, which we're trying to. And so that's the problem here. That's actually kind of funny. We can get stuck on the outside of its own housing here, can't we? No, I guess maybe not. I don't know. I can't tell. So what do we got? So we're fixing this stuff up. That was weird. All right. We're fixing this stuff up, and so So we're going to need to do some collision changes. We're going to have to add some physics settings and stuff. So I'm going to go into the button here, and I'm going to place it in a new layer. I'm going to add a layer. We're going to call it. I'm going to create a player layer. Actually, I'm going to call it player hands. Hands. And I'm going to create a button layer. And we're going to put the button on the button layer. Yes, change children. And I'm going to go into the project settings here. Input manager, not input manager, sorry, physics. And we're going to scroll down and we're going to make it so that button doesn't collide with default or anything other than player hands. That's the only thing that it's going to collide with. We're not even going to have it collide with button, so it doesn't collide with itself. And so if we hit play now, we should have something that actually almost resembles a button. Oh, yeah. Well, no, we don't, because I didn't, you know why. It's because my player hands isn't used by anything yet. So I'm going to go to our left controller and right controller. And we're going to do layer player hands. And yes, change children's play. Change children, please. So here we go, back into it. And now, kind of behaves like a button. If you weren't looking at the sides here, like if you always punch it from the front here, you'd almost never notice that there's a problem. But there is a problem, and we can still fix that. So fixing that problem involves just, for right now, I would like to ultimately figure out if there's a way to fix it at the engine level or at the joint level. One of the things that I might look into later is there's actually a Havoc package, and it may behave differently. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. They probably try to make it to behave as similarly as possible. But you can actually replace the physics system now with Havoc if you decide to. And I have an experiment with it, so that's going to be an interesting episode when we do that. Or when I start experimenting with it on my own, whatever happens first. Our sphere here has a rigid body, and we're just going to make it so that the rigid body is frozen in the X, Z, and not in the Y, and we're going to freeze all rotation axes. So now if we hit play, we should have a button that works like a button, no matter how you press it, unless you press it from underneath, in which case it lifts up. I'm not going to worry about fixing that case for right now. All right. So now we've got that. Now our button needs to actually work. So I'm going to just save the scene, save the project real quick, just make sure everything's saved. And we want to make this button work. I'm just going to go back into the editor here, and we're going to create one more thing here. So I didn't name this. I'm going to actually name it button. Button. Yeah, just button, I guess. Even though it's under button. Button, whatever. I'm going to duplicate this sphere, this button, and I'm going to call it trigger. And I'm just going to move it down. We're just going to move it down to like here. Let's see how that looks. Actually, let's just get a nice non-perspective view of it. And let's just make it so that we only need about the height of the button to move. So like about there. And let's go ahead and remove the mesh renderer and mesh collider, the sphere, mesh filter, and mesh renderer components. And let's go ahead and make this so we don't need the rigid body here either. We want that gone. Oh, configurable joint needs it. So we don't need the configurable joint either. So get rid of that first, then get rid of the rigid body. So we're left with just the sphere collider, and this is actually all we need, and we're going to set it to trigger so that we get triggers when things pass through it. We don't want this thing to like press against the sphere. We want this thing to detect the sphere, and that's what we mean by trigger. So I'm going to go back here, and we now have this extra trigger thing here, and we're going to start writing our first script of this series, I guess. So our first script is going to be called event on trigger. And this is basically going to be a one-line script, and it's going to be an incredibly useful one-line script. I want to point out that like these are type of tools that I feel like should just be built into Unity, especially the ones that only take one line. They should just be in there, and you should be able to look at them too. You should look at the script and be like, oh, it's just one line. I can learn this. So what we're going to need is we're going to need a Unity event. And Unity events aren't in this by default. If I just do like public float, we don't need the starter or the update. I already just deleted them there, but we don't need them for this particular script. Public float, we've got those. But if we did public Unity event, there's a Unity event queue system, but you don't get anything. So that's because you actually have to specifically say, hey, I want to use these. So we can do using Unity Engine, and we can add another using line here using Unity Engine dot events. So now with events, you can do yield instruction. You can do a Unity event, and we're just going to call this event. I'm going to call it button event to not collide with the term event, which evidently is a keyword in C# because it turned blue on me there. So we don't have a start and we don't have an update. And the reason we don't is because all we really need here, I'm just going to get rid of that. All we really need here is a collision routine, and specifically a trigger routine. So I'm just going to do on trigger enter. And I'm just gonna get rid of the private. It's by default private. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should keep the private in there. People usually do that. I just get tired of being overly verbose in code stylings. But please use your own style when you code. And we don't actually need the collider information at all. We just need to know that we collided, and we're just gonna use button event dot button event dot invoke. There it is. It's at the top. Perfect. Thank you, Visual Studio. So we just do button event.invoke. And now whenever this trigger gets entered, it will do whatever we set as the Unity event in the editor. And I'll show you how useful that is here in a second. So we're going to need one more script to actually test this. So I'm going to just create a C# script called, what are we going to call this? I'm just going to call it hello world, because I don't get a whole lot of opportunities to write hello worlds, and this actually will count. So we're going to go ahead and go into hello world here, and we're going to just we're going to get rid of start and update, and we're going to just have a function that we call void hello. And this function will simply do debug.log hello world, just like the old programming examples. So if we hit save on this, now this never gets called. You can see that there's 0 references here. It says 0 references. No one calls hello. But we're going to change that. We're going to actually reference it in an event. So on our trigger here, I'm going to add a component called event on trigger. I'm also going to add hello world. You can drag them in too to add them. It's just fine. And an event on trigger, we've got this button event. List is empty. We hit plus, and we can just redrag the object in, or again, we can just drag the script in here. And the target, we're going to do hello world. Where's hello? Oh, it's not here because I didn't mark it as public. So let's go ahead and do public void hello. And that's also why it was grayed out, is because it couldn't have been called anywhere. It can't be called outside of the file, and since nothing called it, it was like, hey, you're not using this. So if you see gray functions, maybe pay attention to that. So hello world, hello, there it is. And I'm going to go ahead and do one more thing. We need to give this thing a layer. We're going to give it the trigger layer. This is on our trigger, and so we need to make sure it's set to trigger. And we need to set up the collision matrix such that trigger only collides with button. That's the only thing that it collides with. And actually, I should call it button trigger specifically. Let's do that. We're going to just go to add layer and just change this to, say, button trigger. So now this should already say button trigger. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and go to overrides and apply all. Oh wait, no, let's not apply all. Let's just apply the. I'm going to remove. Okay, we can apply part at a time, which is cool. So let's just go to rigid body. We're going to oh wait, I don't want to revert that in the object. Yeah, never mind. We'll do something else later. I'm just not going to worry about it. Okay, so let's just apply it. We'll fix it up later. It'll just be easier to work with. Save project. So this should be it. This should be everything that we need. And hopefully if we just hit play here, I'm going to go forward. I'm going to hit it. And did we get a message in the thing? Hello world, we got a message in the thing. There it is. You see that was the big exciting thing that we got to do. So we got hello world, and we got it twice because I hit it twice. That's excellent. So we have a working button. It could be hooked up to do whatever. We could do wacky stuff. We could have it like change physics settings. I could make it so that it destroys its own breakpoint or destroys the box or something. Like, watch, here we can do that. Let's just make it so that it destroys the box that it's on. We don't even have to make it not say hello world anymore either. We can just go on the trigger and be like, hey, let's add one more thing. And let's say, hey, we want our cube to, let's just game object, let's set active, and we're going to make this unchecked marked. So it's just going to disable the cube. So if we hit play now, notice I didn't do any coding other than that one line of code earlier. And now we hit this thing and the cube disappears. Psh, just like that. Super nice. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of things that you can do just without any code, just by setting up events here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that portion. No, let's undo that. Let's just keep it. Let's call this the project for right now. And that's it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you very much for coming and seeing me today and watching me. And I hope I feel like the episode wasn't as good as the one I recorded yesterday. It's kind of a bummer. I kind of feel that I would feel that way no matter what. Oh, before I quit here, I do want to actually move some things around real quick. I just want to create a folder here for scripts. And we'll go ahead and put those scripts in there. And a folder for not a render texture. That's a mistake I made on the last video. That's kind of funny. Shows that menu's a little picky. So we want prefabs. We're just going to make a prefabs folder, put it up here. Go ahead and put the button prefab in there. And we're going to do one more folder. Call this one materials. And we're going to move that in here. Put the material in. And now it's nicely organized. Oh yeah, and we don't need this render texture that we made. Let's just delete that. Save everything. Save all the things. And we're done. And while we're here, might as well just go ahead and submit this up to the internet. End of episode 1. Button complete. And we're going to just push the changes immediately because why not? So yeah, thank you again for joining, and thank you for still being here while you were watching me do all the administrative stuff there. But I mean, it's stuff that you have to do when you're doing projects too. So hopefully that stuff's not bad to see. It's great to be back. I really feel like I'm back now. That's something interesting about doing the second episode. Even though this isn't a second episode, like it feels like I already got past whatever block I was on. We'll see when we actually go through. Hopefully we'll continue to have really strong episodes like this one. But yeah, I think that we're going to have a lot of fun on this show. And I think that you guys are going to learn a lot about interesting things. I am going to try and provide stuff for non-VR users too. I didn't do much on this episode. in that regard. But I do hope I can provide either some other tutorials for that, or some hybrid stuff. Like it would be nice to do. I don't think anyone's done an asymmetrical VR game tutorial before, and it's actually really exciting because you can basically like have one player who's inside the game, and then other players who are interacting like on their phones and stuff. So that might be something that we might explore at some point, and that would give us more of a range of scripts and tools that we would need for non VR projects just as much as VR projects. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. You guys have a great night, and I'll catch you next episode, hopefully soon.